to see that preference. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So we were talking about UI policy the other day, and the left topic was the data policy. Okay. So on the UI policy side, we saw that um, when we created a table, we also created um, a form which comes by default. So basically something like this, a table. In front of a table, you will see that there will be a form created that we get, and then these forms are validated using UI policy or certain uh, you know what we call the rules are set here for the UI policy, right? For example, conditionally you go ahead and you do enable, disable, those type of properties you set for fields on the form, right? So this is your table. This one is your form. So basically you are trying to validate the form using UI policy, the third one. I'm just keeping this checkbox here to represent a UI policy, which might not be apt representation, but let me keep it here, some sort of UI policy, or let me remove it and keep something else. So I'll remove it from here and bring something else. Let's say, let's talk about this one. So this is your UI policy, right? UI policy that you have kept. Now UI policy is written on top of the table. We have seen that the other day. You write your UI policy, and accordingly what happens is the actions that you perform onto the form will depend on the conditions that you have mentioned into the UI policy, and along with that, the UI policy actions that you have actually included into this, right? So this is policy action. Okay. So by doing so, what we are doing is our front end gets validated, right? The front end, the form that we have, that gets validated. We have validated our form right now. Show, hide, read only, visible, invisible. These are the things that we are setting into the UI policy. Okay. Now let's say this application, now this is all part of an application that you are building, right? This application that you have built, this is your application, and this application is going to be used by some of the organizations. Some of the users within the organization. Now when this is created, assume that some other user is trying to get access of it, but he wants to access this application using a web service written somewhere here. Okay, so this is going to be a user, but the user is sitting here outside and inserting a record into the table or application creates a record using web service. So some sort of web service is written on this table, right? And remotely, without accessing this UI, this form, this guy wants to set something into this table using a web service. Okay. Now, what happens is when you are remotely accessing the table and inserting something into the table, the policy validation that you were doing at the UI level will not be applicable here. Okay. So your policies that you were trying to implement, that okay, when this value comes into the form, another field will become mandatory or read only or something, and accordingly the value will be inserted into the table. But in this case, we are not talking about the form at all. We are not talking about the user interface. All we are talking about is access to the table directly, right? So in that case, the validations, the conditional check you have applied and the action that you have performed onto the form will not be applicable onto the table. So your data, the rule that you have applied to bring that data into the table using the UI policy might not be right enough, right? In that scenario, to preserve your data rules that you have set up or the validations that you are trying to set up, you will have to write something which is known as a data policy. Okay, so I'll just copy it and keep it somewhere here. And let's rename it as data policy. So this data policy is kind of a backdoor check that you are doing. So you are not just allowing the backdoor entry to anybody into your system with all those garbage values that he wants to set into the table. Our policy, our rules are still intact. Doesn't matter if it is coming from the front end or it is coming from the back end. Making sense?
Yes, Ram.
Okay. So this is data policy. Now, if we go back, I'm not sure what example we were taking the other day. If we go back here and if I come here onto subcategories form, let's use this subcategory form here. When we loaded the form, this category name is mandatory. No, we should probably use some other form. Invoices. Okay, here is the application, training application. They were talking about it. Attend data code. Okay, so one UI policy we applied here was when we select training, the batch number becomes mandatory. This was our UI policy. I'll have to set that up again in this instance. We didn't do it in this instance here. So I'll go back and create this UI policy for now. It is attendee table. Come on. When to apply, when training opted is not empty, then I'm going to save it, and what we are going to do here, we're going to create a UI policy action, and in this action we are going to make the batch number a mandatory field. Batch number is mandatory, right? Submit. That's the UI policy we wanted to have. Now if I go to my attendee record form and go and make this training opted as selected, batch number becomes mandatory. I remove it here and batch number becomes optional. Okay, so this is something that we had using UI policy. Now let's go back and let me show something else to you. I'll go get this table from here, and this is my table name. I'm going to copy this and see that when we created this table, we had this thing, allow access to this table via web service. Okay, so we are allowing that on this table, web service access is permitted. Okay, so, and this is a future thing, but I wanted to discuss right now just to showcase what we can do with it. So we have something known as REST API Explorer available in ServiceNow. So let's say I'm going to use this table, and using REST API Explorer, I'm going to insert something into this table. So I'll make a HTTP post using a web service onto the table that we have, which is attendees. Okay, and now what we are going to do is, see, it is the same table, right? Same attendee table that we have as of now. Now I'm going to make this uh, training opted, and I'm going to add something here into the training opted form that we have. See, front end, what happens is when we go and create this attendee record, we add something into the training offerings here. This batch number becomes mandatory, right? Now, without submitting anything into this batch number, I cannot submit it, right? It will ask me to do that. Now, what I'm trying to do is I'm going backdoor entry. I'm taking backdoor entry and trying to set value into the table without providing the batch number there. Okay, so this is something I'm trying to do. So if I go here, training offerings, training opted is a reference field. So I'll go ahead and copy this sys ID and I'll go ahead and paste this. Okay, and then let's come back here and go into attendee table. How many records do we have here? No records as of now. Okay, but I'll go here and send this request. So what it does, it did post, it did create a, it did hit a post API and created a record into the table. And if I go here and refresh this, I'll get one record created in here where the training opted is selected, but the batch number is not selected. You understand what I'm saying? I used some sort of API to insert a record into the table, but in that case, what we did is we supplied the training opted value in here, and we did not supply the batch number in here, which was supposed to be added into this form. Because from now onwards, if I go ahead and update this, this will not allow me to update it, right? Because this is the front end, the user interface is validated by UI policy, right? But the backend is not validated. So I can go ahead and in the backend, I can keep sending that record, so it will keep creating multiple records into the table, right? So and your policy will not be validated at all. So this is what is happening. I created 3 times. Now I'll have 3 records into this. See? And all of these records, you do not have a batch number included into it. Okay? So this is a UI policy. So from that perspective, what you will do is you will create data policies in place, which will ensure that your policies are implemented from the backend as well, right? So in that respect, you will see that convert this to data policy will be available in here. So you can either directly go ahead and create data policy, or you can create UI policy and convert this into the data policy. Okay. So when we create this data policy, just like we have this UI policy action in here, data policy will have data policy rules. So let me convert this to data policy, right? So I converted this to data policy. Now what do I get? Instead of UI policy action, I get data policy rules. So these are the rules that we are defining into the data policy. Now let's go ahead and submit this. What happens now? The policy that we are trying to update from the front end is applied from the back end as well. Now let's go ahead and hit this submit and see what happens, right? Now when I try to submit it, it gives me HTTP 403 saying that this is forbidden operation, right? Because I'm trying to pass something which is not available in there. Right? So this is an illegal thing that you are trying to do, and you cannot do it. Okay? So this is forbidden. As many times as I would do it, it will not allow me to do that because this is a forbidden option. Right? And on the contrary, batch number right now doesn't have any value. Let's go here and keep this batch one or something. Let's see if it is pushing that value in there. It's still forbidden. So what we'll do is we will go back here onto the attendees form and go onto the form and quickly configure this to add some batch numbers here. Uh, let's say 1, 2, 3, save. 1, 2, 3 are values that we have into our batch number field now. 1, 2, 3. So I'll go here and now I'll change the same stuff here and mark this as 1 and try and submit this. What do we get now? We get 201, which is created, right? So when we go back here into our attendees form, we will now see that we have 4 records created in here. The fourth one contains batch number as 1. Clear? Any question here? No question? Okay.
Rahul, can you hear me?
Yes.
Rahul, you did all this with UI policy or did you use data policy? UI policy, right?
I used both of it to demonstrate what it can do. I firstly showed that using UI policy, then used
Yes.
data policy, right? So this data, I converted that UI policy to data policy. And when I converted, after converting, I tried doing that insertion using the backend thing here, and I was not allowed to do that because I have converted that UI policy into data policy. This UI policy, we have converted that
Okay.
into data policy as well. So this is a UI policy here. And if I go back here on attendees form, you have a
Okay,
data
okay.
policy as well.
Yeah, got it.
Hi, Rahul.
Yes, Vinod. Faz.
Yeah. You did everything in the REST Explorer. So in the real time, we have some web services, right? From there, we'll try to insert the data into the table, right?
Yes, and this is doing the same thing. I'm just using one interface to do the thing. It is having a web service one endpoint that I showed you. This is an
Mm-hmm.
endpoint. This is a post operation you are doing. These are the HTTP headers you'll be sending. This is the request body.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you have to implement it, go back and implement this web service. Get this endpoint. Whatever programming language you want to use, go ahead and implement it. No problem with that. Right? I'm just using this front end to make my life easier as of now to do that transaction and show that to you.
Okay. So we can automate this as well, right? To push the data from the web services to our instance, and we can forbid also if this field doesn't, I mean, that value doesn't exist, it won't allow to get inside the data, right?
See, you didn't pay attention, I think. What I'm saying is, if you are applying this policy in the backend, it doesn't matter if you are sending something to this table from the backend or from the front end. This policy will always be applicable if you are having this in the database layer, which is the table layer. So this data policy you have created in here. So it is kind of, the backdoor entry gets stopped here, and you know, uh, let me replace this here. So maybe you can keep this one like this. This is probably going to look like this. See, now your UI policy is in here. You try to send something into the form, right? This UI policy will validate it and then send it to the table, right? You try to send directly to the table. There is a data policy which is guarding the table, and the policies are same. The rule that you have here in data policy and the UI policy that you have, the action that you have created in here, both are same. So you are guarding your front end, you are guarding your back end, both, right? So whatever rule you have written will be the one that will be followed into it. Making sense?
Yes, Rahul. So one more thing, just for clearing the confusion. See, with the UI policy, we have a UI policy action, and for data policy, there must be. I mean, you have shown that there is a data policy action, so there
Rule,
can be a chance that
not an
rule. Yeah,
action. That's rule.
no, rule. Okay, that there can. I mean, it's matching with this UI policy action and data policy rules, right? Both should be matched, or it can be different according to our some requirement.
See, tell me, what was our rule here that we wanted to set?
Uh,
You are on mute, I think. What was our rule that we wanted to set?
Yeah, there is something reference field. Once we'll choose that batch number will be
No,
mandatory.
it's here. Read it through it. The rule says, very simple, plain English rule says, if the training opted field onto the form is not empty, make the batch number mandatory, right? So this rule goes into the UI policy as well as into the UI action both. When we created that UI policy, we created that UI policy action where we said that batch number has to be mandatory. When we created this data policy, here as well, the name has changed, data policy rule it has become, but it is the same thing, right? The only factor that will not come in here is the factor of visibility, invisible, invisible, because from the back end you cannot make something visible, invisible, right? That is applicable to the front end. So that's the reasons you see that the third factor is gone from here, read only and mandatory. We only have read only and mandatory, but we do not have that visible
Oh,
attribute in here.
okay,
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 so the rule will remain same. So you have to define what is going to be the rule for that your form, for that form, right? So that is something that you will define into the UI policy, and then you will decide what action you have to perform on that.
okay. Now,
Correct. So this UI policy action that you have here, similar to this, let's put a one more box here, which is data policy rule. Okay, and let me keep something like this here. Does it make sense now? Along with data
yes,
policy, we are keeping this data policy rule, which is behind it. Right, so you're trying to insert into the table. There is a policy here, and that will govern how you want to fill data into this table. Okay.
yes, Rahul.
Now let's assume that I say to you that hey, my front end needs more validation. More validation, as in I say when I try and submit this form, I must check if my fields are filled completely onto the form or not. if attendee ID is filled, if attendee name is filled, if attendee photo is filled or not, right? Or if I say that if the end date is less than a start date, this is something that I cannot do. My end date should always be more than the start date, right? The training fee deposited uh, cannot be less than 50% of the total fee or something like that. Some policy that we are going to apply. So what we are talking about is to validate the front end, right? The front end validation using some sort of a script or something. So now we are going to talk about a scripting component which is going to actually allow you to validate your front end, change the field values onto the screen, or change the behavior of controls available onto the form. Okay, so let's assume that programmatically, if you have to fill something into any of these values. So if I select this training name here, ServiceNow admin, I want that this fee due date should come up automatically. Okay, there could be a requirement when you select this training opted, this fee due date should come automatically, like 5 days from now. Okay, so with selection of this, so that we cannot do into UI policy. As of the definition that we have into the UI policy that says uh, you can set certain actions into the UI policy, and those actions are mostly related to three attributes of the fields, right? What are those three attributes that we have talked about? Read only, mandatory, and visible invisible. Three attributes of the fields we have talked about as of now. So you will have to, majorly you will be using this UI policy for that purpose. Okay. Although there is some extension to that into UI policy, we will see what we can do into the UI policy. Probably we will add some script and do more with the UI policy that we have written. But the basic thing that the UI policy is designed for is to manage those three attributes of a field into the form or a table. Okay. Now you need more control here onto the form. You want to change the behavior of the form. You want to change the field values onto the form. You want to do certain validation calculation onto the form, right? So that you can do using something known as client script, right? Client script, why client script? Because we are talking about validating or writing something on the client side. So this is your client side, this is your front end, this is a user interface, right? So we will call this as a client side script because this is going to stick to the user interface, the client side of it. We are not going to make any server side call for this one. Okay. So that is known as client side scripting. Consider this similar to the activities that you do when you build a web page. So you use HTML, CSS, JavaScript to build a web page, and and then the validations stuff that you have to do onto the form you are doing using JavaScript. Right? So some JavaScript core framework or any additional framework you'll be using, and you will be validating your front end by applying those logics into there using JavaScript functions and all. The same thing, you are kind of, this is equivalent of it, just for the heck of understanding it, I'm saying that this is equivalent of it. It is not equal to exactly the same JavaScript codes that you do here, but it is equivalent conceptually. This is going to be this is going to remain same. Okay, so that UI policy is here, and as we have into our web application development, we have different page life cycle wherein the page is page renders, page loads, page exits, stuff like that. Though on the same line, you will have your client script types or client script lifecycle here as well. So let's call it that, client script lifecycle. And then the things that you will have into your client script is, if you have your client script here, so the type of client script that you'll be having is for client script. Right, so this client script will be applicable on what? On a form. The client script gets applied onto the form, right? And the client script types are these. I will talk about. First one is, let's say when you load the form, right? So that's a form load event. Type of client script for that is onload. Okay. So one thing is that when you load a form, when I clicked on this attendee record, create attendee record, what did it do? It loaded the form. So this type of event, is known as onload. And the script that runs onto the client script that runs on the load event of this form, while I refreshed this or while I clicked on this create attendee record link, the module, it opened this form. So this type of script that will run on this event will be known as onload. When I go ahead and submit this form, so let's say I'm trying to submit this form, so this event that we are doing is going to be known as onSubmit. Okay. The next one is, if you are changing something onto the form, a field value, like we are changing this field value of training update from ServiceNow admin to blank, so we change something onto this field, right? So this is going to be named as onChange. So you change the reference field, or you change the text field, or you change the select field, whatsoever you did here, but you are changing something. So changing of training update, changing of batch number, changing of fee deposit, whatsoever, right? This is important because let's say if you have to apply some rule into the form, and that rule says that whenever a value or state value of the state field onto the form changes, go ahead and execute this script, do something here. So that's a policy that you are going to apply there onto your form, right? So that is going to be taken care by this onChange type of client script that we have. Okay. Now the fourth one is, if I go back and click here onto the attendees module, what does it present to me? It presents to me this list of record. Okay. So this list of record, I can go ahead and I can update something right from here. If I'm a developer, I can go ahead and update something here, right? So when I update something here, so we are editing something which is known as list. This is a list and I'm editing a list. So the fourth type of script is on edit, on cell edit, right? We are going to edit a list and we are going to edit a cell value out of that list. So we call it as on cell edit. So these four types of client scripts will be there. Is it making sense to you?
Yes, Rahul.
Okay. So let me keep it here. Third one and the fourth one here. So these are the four types of client script we will be having, and we will see how we can make use of this client script to do something, whatever we want to do, using whatever policy application we want to do onto that, we will be doing using these four types of client script. Okay. Shall we go to implementation now and see how we can make use of it? or any other question that you have here? Faz, Vinod, anything that you want to ask here? Deepak?
Nothing, Rahul.
Uh, uh,
Okay.
just you go when you proceed. I have confusion on cell edit.
Okay.
Okay,
Don't
so
get
let's.
confused. We have to talk about it. When I talk about
Okay.
it, then probably you'll get confused. Don't get confused. There is nothing tough into that. It is the easy one. Okay. Okay, just one question here. So when we were doing this UI policy, how did we create that UI policy? We went onto the form and right clicked and configured an UI policy, and we created that. But this UI policy can be created using Studio as well. So if you are into Studio, right from the Studio, you can do that. Now this is going to remain same for all of the types of components we are building here, right? Any component that you are building, you can do the same stuff here as well. So I'll come here and you can see this UI policy coming in. Okay. Now the third thing is the UI policies will also be stored into some table somewhere, right? So I can come into the system UI application and you'll see UI policies are stored in here. And you can search your UI policy here as well. So for example, we were doing that demo. So I'll go here and search for UI policy demonstration, which is available into the UI policy table. And we just created this a short while ago, 1st of December 2017, 22 minutes ago we created it. Okay. Similarly, the client script can also be stored into a table known as client script. It can be found here into system definition. So you can go here and click on this client script and it will show you all the available client scripts into the system. Doesn't matter what application we are talking about because we just jumped onto the table level here. Now if you have to search for any specific form, if a specific application, I can go ahead and filter that out and see how many client scripts are written for one application for one form. To each of these client scripts, you will see the type will be there. So on change, on load, on submit, so on and so forth, and on cell edit as well. So 4 types of client script will be available in here. The same you can do from here as well. So you come here, search for client script, and you'll get your client script in here. Now the good thing, at any point if you need the table name where these components are getting stored, you can come to Studio and you can search for those items. For example, I need to know where all my tables are getting stored. So this attendee table, this training offering table, this training support table, where are these going to be stored? Right. So I'll come here and I'll look into these all are table. So this will be stored into some sort of table. So here is the table. When I select this, it presents to me the table names and says that sys underscore db underscore object is a table where all my tables will be stored. Similarly, if we are talking about a UI policy, when I go and select this one, it says sys underscore UI underscore policy is the table where all my UI policies will be stored. If we talk about client script, we should have the similar table like client script. Sys script client is the table where my client scripts will be stored. Okay. So right now, if I go here into, let me close this one. If I go into my, so this is the, I clicked on this create client script module and it brought me to this client script table. The same thing I can do here, sys underscore script underscore client dot list, and it will bring me to the same table, right? Now, right now I have 1097 records here into this table. Let me go back and let me create one UI client script in here. Client script. So when I go ahead and create a client script, right from here, or I can go into the shopping application, uh, training application, and right from the create attendee record form, I can go ahead and do configure, and then I can do client script. And now I can go ahead and create this new client script here. Let's name it, this is onload type of client script that we have, and just submit it. So what happens now? We had 1097 client scripts. Now when I refresh, a new client script has been created and it has become 1098 now. Okay, so our newest client script that we have created will now come here. I can just sort this out and I can show that to you. See, the onload one comes here, 1st of December 2017. Just now it was created, although we have not applied any rule into this one, but this is there, right? Let's go ahead and apply this, very simple rule here. We have been, we have been talking, and we know that ServiceNow uses JavaScript as a programming language here, right? So let me go ahead and test it. So I'll go here and keep a very simple JavaScript function, which is alert, right? Pass a test message in here and save it. And then I'll go back to my created in the record form and let me reload it. Oh, I have to specify the type here, which is onload, and then submit it. I'll go here and click on this created in the record. What do I get? I get that test alert message here. So it looks like our JavaScript function will work, right? Here into this box that we have for the client script. Right? So very simple example was this. Okay. So it does work here into this one. Now when we have to validate something here, again we have talked about what type of validation, what type of behavioral changes we'll be trying to do into the application. So let's say we have to do get set values onto the field. Okay. Show hide, yes, you can do that here. Show hide fields. Calculate or compare values from fields. Okay. All right. And get set we have done, show hide we have done, calculate comparison we have done. So these are the things that we are doing. Show messages, show hide messages, change the look and feel of fields. These are something that we'll be trying to do, right? We'll try to get set values onto the fields that we have on form, show hide some fields using a script, calculate or compare values that we have onto the form fields, right? And show hide messages, change the look and feel of the fields, etc. Right, this is regular validation stuff, client-side validation stuff. Don't we do that when we design our web applications? Or even, the Windows application or any desktop application. Don't we do that? So that the same here, the same thing will be done here as well. So we have seen that some of our JavaScript functions will be available here. We will be using it, right? But mostly what ServiceNow has done is they have given you JavaScript access here into this scripting component, which is quite good. But on top of it, what they have done is they have provided you some sort of APIs, right? And those APIs are going to help you out to interact with ServiceNow specific components, fields, etc. Okay, so if you are doing this in HTML, then what would happen that this becomes a select box. So this is input type select, and then you go ahead and add options into this. Option 1 value this, option 2 value this, option 3 value this, Okay, so this becomes a select type for you into HTML. This is a reference field, and we have been given this reference field as it. For creating this reference field, we didn't have to code explicitly, right? This was available in here. So this is not a basic control in HTML, a basic lookup control in HTML. This is something that ServiceNow guys have created, right? So is this date field. The string field is kind of an input field, very easy to use and implement in HTML as well. So no worries about that. But now for some of these fields that we have, interacting with those fields, these are composite fields, right? The custom fields created by ServiceNow. Interacting with those fields, setting values from those fields is something, you know, to do these kind of activities. What they have done is they have provided you some APIs. Using those APIs, you can actually do all of these that we have listed here. Okay, these are the things that we can do using that API. Now, what are those APIs that we're talking about? So right now we are talking about a form, right? And the form that we have created in ServiceNow. And the API that they have given to us is the glide form API. With respect to form, they have given one glide API. So this is just a naming convention. Let's say if you are a Java program and you go ahead and create a namespace, right? And you name it something, and you go ahead and within that namespaces you keep some classes. Within that class you will keep something, you will have your properties, or you will have your methods, right? You will have your logics, stuff like that you will have into that. So you create a namespace for that one. So what these guys have done is they have created this glide form, API and passed on to us. And in that glide form API, they have given us a lot of methods into it, which will help us do all these things that we are looking to do. Okay. And not just glide form, they have a bunch of APIs for different purposes, client side, server side, both. So you will see that we will call this as glide stack. Right? So this is their glide stack, and within that glide stack, you will see the first thing that we are encountering right now is the glide form. Then we will have glide record. So this glide form is to interact with forms, right? This glide record is to interact with records. That means you are talking about DB, right? The glide form, glide record. Then you will have, let's say, if you are doing date manipulations, so you'll have a glide date, right? If you are doing some aggregations onto the tables available into the database, then you will be using glide aggregate. If you are to create some pop-up windows, probably you will use glide dialog window API, right? So on and so forth. Glide Ajax, right? Glide element, right? So within this glide stack, they have created several other APIs. These APIs will help you out in doing several things. Now, the first one we are going to talk about is glide forms, which is to operate onto the form level to do client side stuff. Client side get set, hide, show, calculate, show, hide messages, change look and feel of feed, etc. So for that they have created this glide form, and there is a global object for glide form created. So they have given you a global object as well, right? The object of this API, this class glide form, is gform. So you don't have to explicitly go ahead and initiate this glide form class or something. You simply go ahead and use this static object of gform, right? And this gform would contain several methods into it. For example, gform.getValue from a field. So this is a method. So it will, if you are to get a value of a field, so let's say by using a script, you want to check what is the value that you get into this training update field, right? So you will pass the training update field name here. training. If the field name is training underscore opted, so I'll go ahead and pass the field name here as training opted, and this will get me the value of the training opted field that we have. Similarly, if I need to get what is the value that we have into the batch number, I can go ahead and replace this with batch underscore number. Okay, go for anything. So this is your getting value from the form. If you have to set something, they have done something known as gform.setValue. Now when you have to set value, you have to first of all specify the field on which you want to set the value, and then you have to specify the value as well. So you'll go ahead and set that too. So two parameters it will expect. Get value, the field name it will expect, and set value, it will expect the field name and the value as well. Okay. Similarly, let's say another very simple example is that using our gform, we want to post one error message onto the screen. Something has happened and we want to notify the user that this error message has happened. So I'll go ahead and do add error message, right? And in this, I'll go ahead and pass my message, which is something weird has happened. Okay, so I have a method for that too, to show an error message. This can be an information message as well. So in that case, this error will be changing to information, right? So this is your information message. Okay. So on and so forth. You will see that there are various methods available into the gform class, gform API, that we will be using to set these things onto our client scripts. Okay. So what we are seeing, we are talking about client script. We are talking about these onload, on submit, on change, and on sell edit type of scripts that will be applicable onto the form that we have created. And by form I mean that by table as well, because in the backend the form is basically a representation of the table, right? So that's what we are going to have here. So in the backend you have this form, and then you have this table. So the client script that you are writing, it will be applicable to the table. All right. So this client script you will be writing, this will be cascaded to the form. User will have a feel that they are getting it from the form, but actually it is applied onto the table in the backend. Now to write these client scripts that we have, one thing that we'll be having is that is known as our glide form API. So consider that this is your glide form API that we have here. Glide form or G underscore form, right? So all of these that we have here on load, on submit, on change, on sell edit, all of these are going to use this glide form API somehow. Okay, so these will use this glide form API, and based upon the uses, it will call different methods available into it, and the API will solve the purpose that you try to solve. Clear on the conceptual aspect of it? Any doubt here?
No.
Others?
No, Rahul.
Uh, Rahul, I have a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
You just have created an API, right, in this class before.
API, no, we did not create any API. What API you are talking about?
What my doubt is, can you import an API from outside, not from ServiceNow tool?
Say that again, you broke badly.
Can I use an API from outside
What
application programming interface?
what type of web service you are talking about?
Yes, Rahul.
And what is your objective?
Whatever it is. If I
What it
want
is?
to,
Give me one example, one use case.
mm,
If you are thinking about it, give me one use case and I'll explain what what you are looking for.
Mm,
I think he's talking about if we do some integration.
Correct.
If we do some integration with other tool, we wanted to integrate it with ServiceNow. I think we need to use the web services.
Yes.
REST,
And
yes.
REST API and this, yeah.
yes.
That's yeah.
And the answer
Mhm.
is yes, you can do integrate that here in ServiceNow.
Okay, okay, Rahul.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you were talking about consuming web services and its endpoint from external applications into your ServiceNow environment. One example
Exactly,
would
Rahul.
be, one example would be, let's say you want to create one application in here in ServiceNow that is going to showcase the weather information of certain places. Now, where do you get the weather
Yes.
information from some places? You get from some weather channel, some weather agency, right? So those information you
Yeah.
will get from some weather companies. So those weather
Yes.
companies will provide you information about a place's weather in form of some web services, right? That
Yes.
web service you
Yes.
can consume and use in ServiceNow. You can consume web services
Oh,
from outside in ServiceNow. You can, you can expose web services from inside of ServiceNow for applications outside it. Both is possible.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that example I showed to you, right? The one that we were using into the data policy, inserting a record using not using the UI but using that API, the endpoint.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm clear. I'm clear, Rahul. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other question here?
But I think we will do separate integration class, is it?
Yes, I cannot finish the last thing from the first day. Deepak,
Okay, okay, that's fine, that's
hang
fine.
on,
Yeah.
please.
Mm.
We'll do that. Definitely, we'll do that. We need to learn a lot of the ServiceNow scripting before we reach up to that point, right? Let's say today, if I start talking about integration, you are a JavaScript expert or a .NET expert or Java expert. You know how to consume web services in these programming languages. But how are you going to do that in ServiceNow? You don't know that as of now. So you need to know the platform well. You need to know how you are going to consume those things here in platform. And then we will go ahead and try and integrate services from outside into our application. Okay. And these things of client script or server side script will be part of all those learning that is required for integrating outside web services into our ServiceNow environment. Okay.
Yeah. I have one small question.
Sure, go ahead, please.
Mhm. My question is, how would identify like the application is global application or it's a scoped application?
Give me one example of application. We'll go ahead and find that out.
No, that application we create like training application. Okay.
Let's go here into
So.
training application. You are the admin. Right click here, edit
Mhm.
application menu.
Mhm.
See this?
Yeah.
What does it tell you? This tells me this is a scoped application, having the application scope as training application in here. Now let's go to another application which is incident. Or yeah, incident. Right click here, edit application menu. What is it?
Yeah.
Global,
Got you. Yeah. Mhm.
right? Let's go to
Mhm.
something else. I'll go to this developer toolkit, edit application. What do we have here?
Yeah. That is, yeah, it's not global. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Even if it is available everywhere. So if I am here onto this overview and I do right click edit module, this says even this module is in training application. Okay. So whatever component you want to verify, if it is in global application or in a scoped application, you will go and find out into the applications or modules or links property. Clear?
Yes. Yeah. Mm.
Anything else?
No.
Others? Vinod, Faiz, Shiva, any other question?
No, Rahul, I'm good.
No, Rahul.
Okay. So today we learned about, we confirmed our understanding of UI policy, and we learned about data policy, and we have kicked off the discussion of client script. Right? Conceptually, at least we have done that today. I need you to go back and read about every of these topics that we have discussed today. Right? Go and read about UI policy, data policy. Play with your applications, whatever you have created as of now, right? And learn about the client script as well, and then come back, and we will continue our understanding of client script tomorrow. Okay?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Rahul.
I need you to continuously read through all of those topics that we are doing. If you don't read, then you will be left behind. Okay?
Yes, Rahul.
Yeah.
Yes.
So please do that, because we are going at a good pace now. And we have completed a lot of topics. So your time should also be devoted into this. Otherwise, you will not realize, and we will be way too ahead of stuffs which we are doing, and then probably you will lose it.